Hey, it's been a while. Last time you saw me, you probably saw me freaking out about the results of the draft lottery. Well, because that has come and gone, what I wanted to do in this video was go over to the mock drafts and talk about the top 10 picks in this year's draft, and talk about these players, talk about the teams, talk about who could go where, and in order to help us out, we're going to go over onto the DraftKings article that was posted earlier yesterday after the draft lottery had concluded. Now, the reason I'm using an article and not doing it myself is because, simply put, I'm not smart enough to do this. I don't know too much about the prospects or the teams or their situations, so I gotta rely on secondary sources to help me out. Secondly, there are a bunch of post-lottery mock drafts that were posted after the draft lottery yesterday. Stephen Ellis on Daily Faceoff has one. It's a pretty good one. There also is the regular one on mynhldraft.com. But the reason I'm not going with either of these two is because I just simply don't like the picks that they made. And the DraftKings one, written and posted by Benjamin Zweiman from yesterday, I thought was the mock draft that the picks sort of align more so with what I feel is going to happen instead of the other ones. So without further ado, I will leave a link in the description to the DraftKings article. Go out there and read what it is that Zweiman has to say about these prospects. But if we go over to the DraftKings post-lottery NHL mock draft, you kick things off at number 1 overall, you have Chicago taking Connor Bedard. And that's not a surprise. This is a guy that's going to be a generational talent. I still personally don't think that Chicago was the team that deserved him more, especially considering the historical success they've had over the past decade and a bit, plus the assault covering of Kyle Beach and how that was handled. This is not the team that I felt deserved Bedard the most. But of course, as I said yesterday, don't go out there and hate on the fans. The fans didn't do anything wrong. They're just cheering for their team, and they're happy about it. So good on you guys for getting your guy, but I just don't think it was the right team to go to. Either way, second overall on this DraftKings article has the Anaheim Ducks taking Adam Fantilli. And this is not a surprise either. Fantilli is the consensus second overall pick, and as a guy who is projecting to being probably the best NCAA prospect we have seen since Eichel in Korea, this is not a consolation prize in the slightest. It's funny because we said the same thing about Eichel back in 2015. This is no consolation prize. He could have been a first overall pick in any of the other years. It's just Connor McDavid happened to be there. And for Fantilli, the guy was an absolute stud, the top player in the NCAA for points, and he is that good for a reason. Heading over to Anaheim, it's going to be good to see him and Zegras play as a 1-2 on that center core. This is where things get interesting, and it's why I chose the DraftKings list instead of the others to talk about, because third overall they have Matvei Michkov heading over to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, Michkov, just for all the other reference points here, on Stephen Ellis's list, he has Michkov going number 6 to Arizona, and on mynhldraft.com, they have Michkov going number 4 to San Jose. I like Michkov a lot, and I think talent-wise, he is right there with Adam Fantilli, if not maybe even closer to Connor Bedard. But with the contract situation in Russia, plus the geology conflicts that are going on right now, it's tough to really project how available he is going to be over the next few years. But when it comes to pure talent, this is a guy that is going to be at the top of this draft class when it comes to goal-scoring ability and playmaking. And for Columbus, with their talent pool of Russian players already in the organization, Chinakhov, Marchenko, plus the ones they've traded away like Bobrovsky or Gavrikov. This is a team that's okay with Russian players, and if you give Matvei Michkov to Johnny Gaudreau's right wing, then that's a pretty good pairing, if I do say so myself. Sure, it's not guaranteed he's going to be taken this high, but I think just in terms of the talent, he should be able to go there. Fourth overall, you have the San Jose Sharks. They have them taking Will Smith out of the NTDP. And this is one of those picks where if you take Smith over a guy like Leo Carlsson, who, spoiler alert, is going over to number 5, Montreal Canadiens, then you're really trying to capitalize more so on the skill and the pizzazz in Will Smith's game. Having Will Smith play with a guy like Thomas Bordeleau and William Eklund sounds like a match made in heaven, and it could be one of these things where you think about Trevor Zegras and Connor Bedard, what that could have looked like. This Will Smith plus Eklund sort of combo might be just a step below that, but also with the same sort of impact. So if Will Smith goes over to San Jose, it makes sense to me, and it leaves the Montreal Canadiens with Leo Carlsson, who is going to be a phenomenal player himself. There were comparisons thrown around there saying he is the next Mats Sundin, big Swedish guy, good two-way game, really good puck handling abilities in tight, and just an awareness of the game that transcends his age. Leo Carlsson could be a top-line center, and if he does max out to that Mats Sundin sort of ceiling, then you're not really worrying about that first, second-line center debate in Montreal with Carlsson, Doc, and Suzuki. 6th overall, you have yourselves the DraftKings folks saying Oliver Moore is going to go over to Arizona, and this is one of the better players on this NTDP squad, despite the fact that he might not have as many points as some of his teammates. This is because Oliver Moore is just an absolute gamer. He goes out there, he works extraordinarily hard, and on top of that, he's got some really good skills too. He just knows how to play a puck-facilitating game that works, and even though there may be some higher offensive capacity tools with his teammates, none of these guys work as hard, they play as hard, nor are they as ambitious as Oliver Moore is out there on the ice. Plus, you have the fact that he's going over to the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers next season, which is the program that recently housed Logan Cooley, so you can see there's already a lot of success with Coyotes in that organization. 7th overall, you have yourselves the Philadelphia Flyers taking Zach Benson out of the Winnipeg Ice in the WHL, and Benson, you want to talk about Oliver Moore and his work ethic? Well, Zach Benson arguably has the strongest work ethic in this entire draft. He's always going, he's got a motor that doesn't stop. Sure, he makes a lot of his offense happen from the perimeter, but if he's really able to cut in and start creating more lanes in the inside of the ice, this could really unlock an offensive ceiling to his game that is untapped at this point in time. Zach Benson, if everything works out, could be a 70 to 80 point player with a ton of energy in the tank that makes things super difficult for the opponent, and for a Philadelphia Flyers squad that boasts the likes of guys like Cutter Gauthier and other bigger names, this could be a good complementary piece to those skill sets. The 8th overall pick belongs to the Washington Capitals, and they're taking, with the projection here on DraftKings, Axel Sandin Pellikka out of the SHL. Now, Sandin Pellikka is, in most people's minds, the top right-handed defenseman in this year's draft, if not the top defenseman, period. And for good reason, too. He has a ceiling that is as high as a first-pairing guy, and if everything works out, he could be a very agile, puck-moving defenseman that could be your number one guy on the power play. As John Carlsson fades towards the end of his career, Sandin Pellikka could be that replacement at the top. The 9th overall pick belongs to the Red Wings, and they're going to select, based off of this mock draft, Edward Shala out of the Czechia League, playing for HC Kometo Brno. Now, we had just made the Why I Want video talking about Shala, so if you want to go out there and see, it's all going to be there. But Craig Button labeled Shala as a potential David Pastrnak type of player. With the skills that he has and the offensive output that he's able to produce, he's got one of the more underrated shots in this year's draft. He can just wire it from anywhere with precision, and it always hits the top of the net. But realistically, there are things holding him back when it comes to engagement and work ethic in his own end, plus the lack of production that was significant in the top Czechia League, which shouldn't be a factor in my opinion, because he's a 17, 18-year-old guy playing at the top Czech League, so he's playing against adults. It doesn't really matter in my opinion. But still, there are some concerns that people have about that. It shouldn't be a deterrent for the Red Wings, though, as they have had their fair share of drafting Czech players in the past. Filip Zadina is the one that comes to my mind right away. Does Shala project to be better than him? Who really knows? But if you're a Wings fan, you can let me know in the comments all your opinions about that. And then you have yourselves the 10th overall pick. The St. Louis Blues are going to take Ryan Leonard out of the US NTDP, according to this mock draft. He's one of the more skilled guys on the NTDP this season, and he had a whole bunch of points too, just like all the other players, Will Smith, Gabe Perreault, etc. But for Ryan Leonard, he is a lot more of a strong guy. He's able to power his way to the front of the goal, and his wrist shot is pretty good as well. This could be a really good pickup at number 10, especially for a St. Louis Blues team that has really focused on getting these hard-to-play against guys in the past as well. Jake Neighbors, Bolduc, Jimmy Snuggerud, these guys are pretty difficult to play against, so for St. Louis, if they take a guy like Leonard, it would make sense in my opinion as well. And that kind of rounds out the video. Sure, if you're a Canucks fan, you might be saying, Lego, you literally cut it off right before Vancouver's pick. And yeah, I did that by reason. Let's talk about Vancouver a little bit later in today's show and what they could do with their draft picks. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this mock draft. It's just from DraftKings. I just went out there and copied and pasted their thing. So the link is going to be in the description if you want to see the rest of what they had to say. Other mock drafts are available on social media, but I went with this one because I like the picks on this one the most. If you're a fan of any of the teams in the top 10, then what are your opinions on these players and draft picks picks for your teams. Let me know your opinions. Do you like him? Do you not like him? Who would you rather have instead? Let me know your opinions in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.